Hey dudes, and welcome back to the Bantz. As always, I am your host, the Bantz. And here we are once again. We've made it to another Friday, another end of the week. So as always, it is time for our second What's Happening in Fashion for the week. So let's just get right into it. And first up, of course, we have our headlines for the day. And in our first headline of the day, Instagram account Supreme Copies just put out their inaugural coffee table book, so let's give it a look. So first up, if you are not familiar with this Instagram account, basically Supreme Copies does the same thing that Diet Prada has always done, only specifically for Supreme. They basically just go back through the history of Supreme and point out all the times that Supreme has copied an idea for one of their pieces. And so what they've done here is taken their Instagram feed, condensed it down, and published it into a book available for everybody to read. So if maybe you've always been interested in seeing some older pieces from Supreme, or learning a little bit more about Supreme history, or maybe you've always been interested in seeing exactly how much Supreme has copied over the years, or hey, maybe you're even just a fan of young publishers, either way, I would definitely at least check this out. And of course, I will also link the Instagram account and the Amazon link in the description down below. Then Complex Magazine put out a very in-depth article on the history of Pastelle, which was originally supposed to be Kanye West's first clothing line. Now, for those of you who may or may not remember, about a decade ago, Kanye came up with this idea for his first ever streetwear clothing line called Pastelle. You may also remember that he mentioned it once here in one of his more popular songs of all time, Stronger. Now, I'm not going to go into it too much, mainly because I don't want to spoil this article for anyone, but they really do a nice job of diving deep into the history here, talking about some of the people that were also behind it alongside Kanye, and even throwing up a bunch of not only photos but sketches of pieces which really up until now had pretty much been lost to time. So I do have to say that whether you're a fan of Kanye or not, if you are a fan of streetwear and especially streetwear history, definitely check this out. Once again, a absolutely amazing read. Okay, and now let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, Hyke put out their list for what they consider to be the 8 best unknown graffiti cities, and they do a nice little job of showing some pictures from each city and doing a nice little blurb as to why. So if that sounds interesting to you, I definitely check this out. Then Pow Wow Long Beach and the Long Beach Museum of Art came together to showcase 21 international artists who deserved a little bit more time in the spotlight. So if you're interested in seeing some of their newest works in these photos, they're definitely worth a look. And lastly, Juxtapose put up a nice image gallery of Banksy's newest exhibit currently going on in London. If you are a fan of the artist, or maybe just a fan of street art in general, definitely check this out. And if you happen to be in London anytime from now to August, this is definitely worth taking a trip to. Alright, and now moving back into our fashion section for the day. First up, designer Tobias Birk Nielsen showed off his newest lookbook from Spring/Summer 2019, and I think this is super well done. For those of you unfamiliar with the brand, let me bring you a little bit up to speed. Tobias is a relatively younger designer who's really well known for what I would consider his post-apocalyptic themes mixed with some very experimental techwear and a huge use and variety of the color gray. And in this collection, we definitely see a continuation of that. There are some insanely well-produced techwear ideas and motifs in this collection, alongside those more grungy, more post-apocalyptic ideas I was talking about prior. And even if this collection feels a little bit more rough around the edges as opposed to some of his earlier work, I still really personally like it and think it goes very well with the vibe he was going for. And overall, we have just a really solid collection here. if you're a fan of very similar designers such as Boris Bijan Saberi or Damir Doma, then this will definitely be right up your alley. And otherwise, if you are a fan of techwear or more experimental contemporary menswear, definitely give this a look. Then Taiwanese-based brand Professor E showed off their Spring-Summer 2018 lookbook, and all I can really say is wow. What we have here is an absolutely phenomenal menswear lookbook that even skirts a little bit along the line of avant-garde at times while still maintaining its contemporary ideas. And let me dive a little bit deeper into what I mean by that. If you look at a lot of the pieces here, a lot of the designs here, you'll notice a lot of just little things, little details, little aesthetics that are really well known and commonly used in more experimental brands. We see some very interesting silhouettes here along with the materials that go to perfectly match them, as well as some very interesting distressing ideas and hemming ideas that are much different than what you see from the more trendy brands nowadays. And of course, the attention to detail in some of these pieces and the way that they're accessorized is, I can't put into words how nice it is, really. And even with all that said and done, Professor E has done a fantastic job of taking all these ideas and just pulling them back just enough to keep this brand a contemporary menswear brand at its core. So even though there are, yes, some very experimental pieces here and there, we still have some really nice motifs and colors and patterns that you'd expect from any menswear contemporary brand. Really, for as small as this lookbook is, it is by far, up to this point, one of the best hybrids of contemporary menswear, and I would consider avant-garde, that I have seen probably ever. So if you're a fan of either of these styles, or if I had to compare it to a specific brand, if you're a fan of Song for the Mute, then definitely check this out. Really, just really well done. Then brand SK Manor Hill showed off their Spring Summer 2019 collection, and I think they did a very nice job here. The emphasis of this lookbook here seems to revolve around the dichotomy of two specific things here, those being the colors white and indigo blue. And let me just quickly start off by saying that this is absolutely a gorgeous use of indigo blue here. Serious shout outs to the textile makers, the dyers, whoever came up with this color. And even while only using two colors in this lookbook for the most part, Manor Hill does a fantastic job of using other means to show off their palette here. We see some very nice designs and some very interesting silhouettes, alongside some really beautiful patterns and some very quality materials as well. And really, just a super solid, super well put together, and very nice and interesting lookbook. Then 10 Deep showed off their newest Spring Summer 2018 lookbook, and I thought it was alright. As per usual with the brand, we start off with some nice, bright, eye-catching colors mixed with some overall nice graphics and even some really nice and interesting all-over prints as well. And I do have to say that the patchwork in this collection, although not the most enjoyable on the eyes, is definitely some of the most interesting they've done in a long time. My only really big complaint in this lookbook is the checkerboard. I know I've talked about how much I've enjoyed it before, but I've also talked about how much it's been done before, and it's really been done before. But even with that said, 10 Deep actually does a very nice job with it here. Too bad everybody else has already done it. Then brand Hyke and the North Face came together for their newest Fall-Winter 2018 collaboration, and let's just talk about it. Now, yes, this is women's wear, but that's not really why we're talking about it, so don't worry too much on that end. Although I will say that for techwear pieces, for North Face pieces, these are actually very interesting, very refreshing, and I do love some of the ideas here. But with all of that out of the way, let's get on to my main point about this collection, and that is that it really feels like the North Face is only really doing this to compete with the Moncler Genius collections. Like, don't get me wrong, I do think that this is a very cool and very interesting collection in and of itself, but it just feels super similar to some of the things that we've seen out of the Moncler Genius collection. And seeing as how many months ago now those were all introduced, seeing this come out now, or at least in the upcoming season, just feels very sketchy to me. Absolutely no offense to anyone over at Hyke, but this collaboration just once again kind of feels like the North Face attempting something that they want to do, but then just end up falling short of doing it. Okay, and of course, lastly, let's move on to our articles for the day. And first up, The Intercept put out an amazingly in-depth article on the factory conditions in Ethiopia, kind of starting off on how they always show themselves as being super clean and super well maintained and safe. However, the management is still very bad and poorly run, and the workers themselves are way underpaid for what they are doing, and they kind of go into both sides of it, talking to the management, talking to the workers, why it is the way it is, if it's going to improve or get worse, and so on and so forth. Overall, very interesting article, and if you're into the ethics of fashion, this is definitely worth the read. Then Dye Workwear put out a very interesting article on what they are considering the death of the suit, and they go into why they feel this is the case, plus the history as to where the suit came from, its rise to prominence, and then once again, of course, the kind of decline or stage we're in now. Very nice read overall, and if you're a fan of men's classical wear, or maybe just a fan of history of men's fashion in general, either way, I would definitely look at this. And lastly, Heddles put out a nice little introduction to what they consider workwear stripes, basically going over some of the more popular patterns in workwear. And although not super in-depth, if you ever wanted to learn a little bit more about some of the textiles used in menswear in general, I'd definitely give this a read as well. Alright guys, and with that, we've reached the end of our second What's Happening in Fashion for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, if you want to read any of the articles I talked about today or see any photos I wasn't able to include, I've linked everything in the description down below. And if you guys are new here to the channel, then welcome. We do these What's Happening in Fashion videos twice a week, every Monday and Friday, plus the occasional other video here and there if we have time for it. So if you're a fan and want to see more, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you just have any questions, comments, concerns, or even just want to talk fashion in general, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I am always willing to talk fashion. And thank you guys as always for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and as always, until next time.